mic check again? You need a mic check again? Mic check, mic check. 1, 2. Good. 1, 2, 3. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mic check. Mic check, mic check.
Seems like it's been a while since we saw everybody.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti, and I'm pleased to be here to talk to you about our big win today in the United States Supreme Court. This was a big win for democracy. I realize this is a very contentious issue. People have very strong feelings about it. But in America, the way we resolve most of those disputes is by arguing about it, by electing representatives, and by having them resolve the big policy questions. This was a case where we had a question of whether courts would foreclose the ability of the people through their elected representatives to make these decisions, or whether the people would indeed be able to engage in self-government. And in a very measured opinion from the Chief Justice, the court resoundingly affirmed the constitutionality of Tennessee's law, said that the Constitution does allow states to make these decisions where the evidence is contested. The states and not the judges should be the ones who decide. And we had the good fortune of defending a very well-drafted bill. It was SB1 and HB1, reflecting the importance that the General Assembly put on this, sponsored in the Senate by Majority Leader Jack Johnson, sponsored in the House by Majority Leader William Lamberth, passed by a bipartisan supermajority, and mirroring the outcomes in other jurisdictions that have looked hard at the medical evidence. I know a lot of people say this is just political, this is just ideological, but if you look over in Europe, multiple countries that had previously embraced these treatments for kids have, after close consideration of the evidence, greatly restricted or prohibited these treatments. If you look at the United Kingdom, if you look at Sweden, if you look at Norway, these are not countries that have the political composition that Tennessee has, but like Tennessee, they looked at the evidence, they considered the risks of kids and the evidence of benefits, and they decided that this was not appropriate treatment for kids. The Supreme Court recognized that Tennessee can constitutionally do the exact same thing. We'll be glad to take questions shortly, but first, I'm happy to turn it over to Majority Leader Jack Johnson.
Thank you, General. Thank you, General Skrmetti. Let me start by just celebrating what an incredible day this is. As I reflect on the events over really the last 2.5 years, slightly over that actually, when Leader Lamberth and I began this conversation about bringing a bill to protect children in Tennessee from these irreparably harmful procedures. We worked with our legal staff. We worked with the Attorney General's office. We thought carefully. We listened to stakeholders about what this legislation should look like. And we came up with a really good bill. We anticipated that we would face legal challenges, and we did. We were sued by the Biden Department of Justice and went through the court system and ended up before the highest court in the land, the United States Supreme Court. And today, the constitutionality of our legislation was affirmed. And when the Supreme Court ruled, as they did today, and handed down the decision, that we do in fact have the constitutional right, the compelling interest to protect kids, we were right and we were just in our relentless pursuit to protect Tennessee's children. to allow children who cannot vote, they can't get a tattoo, they can't enlist in the military, to allow them to permanently alter their bodies in the name of affirming them. That's not compassion, it's exploitation. I want to thank our incredible Attorney General, his amazing team who fought tirelessly to defend this legislation in the courts. I want to thank my dear friend, the House Majority Leader, William Lamberth, who you'll hear from momentarily. He co-sponsored this and led in a heroic way in the way he fought for passage of this very, very important legislation. Our colleagues in the House and the Senate, our governor, Governor Bill Lee, who was a champion for this legislation from the get-go and very quickly signed it into law once it was passed by the General Assembly. I want to thank him for his commitment to our state's children. I want to thank Matt Walsh and the Daily Wire, who did a very important service to our state when they drew attention to this issue and they highlighted the fact that, yes, in fact, it was happening right here in Tennessee. And that helped us get the ball rolling with this very, very important legislation. We won't rest on this victory. We will continue to fight for Tennessee children. We will always fight for Tennessee children. It's the right thing to do. With the left in our country, in the left's America, that is, biology and truth are optional. But here in Tennessee, with the Tennessee General Assembly, they're not. They're fact, and we will base our laws and what we do on those facts. So whether it's stopping the mutilation of our children, keeping men out of women's sports, ensuring parents have a say in their child's education, we will always fight, stand up for common sense, and we will always stand up for conservative values. This time, I'll hand it over to my friend and colleague, the Majority Leader of the House of Representatives, William Lamberth.
Thank you, Jack. Well, look, when I woke up this morning, I didn't know we'd get this decision. But I hold right here, I think it's 118 pages, that affirm freedom, that affirm justice, that stand for states' rights, and that protects our children. So when Jack and I were first approached about carrying this bill, we were told this isn't happening. We were told there's no doctor out there that's cutting off the private parts of children. We were told here in Tennessee there's no hospital that would possibly allow a doctor to do that. And then we were approached with folks that had evidence that said, no, it's in fact happening right here in Tennessee. And I say this as a girl dad, one of the most insulting answers that we got from doctors in the medical community is, oh, no, we've only done top surgeries. Let's be crystal clear. What they meant was cutting off the breast of little girls, but they hadn't cut off the private parts of little boys, so somehow or another it was okay. It wasn't okay then. It's not okay now, and it's never going to be allowed in this state. If some adult wants to cut off their body parts, alter their body in whatever way they want to, they're adults. Fine, do whatever you want to do. It's a free country, but leave the kids out of it. That's what General Skrmetti and his fantastic staff argued in front of the court. That's what Jack fought for in the Senate and I fought for in the House, is that each state should be able to protect our children from bizarre practices that are not treatment, they're not affirming, they're not care, it's mutilation. We had a child testify in the House. It was a little girl that stared into the eyes of strangers, my fellow colleagues, and she testified that she was ugly. She thought she was ugly because somebody had mutilated her body, cut off body parts, put substances in her body she never should have had in her body, and she said her ability to be a woman was stolen before she ever became one. Never, ever, ever in the state of Tennessee will that ever happen again. I thank the 6 judges of the Supreme Court that stood for common sense and decency in states' rights and helped protect our children, not just here in Tennessee, but in the 20-something other states that had passed these laws. And I want to call on Congress right now to pass a national ban on sexual mutilation. Yes, I said it. I am asking our friends in Congress and in the U.S. Senate to file a bill today that bans this nationwide. And if they don't do it, I hope every single other state, if you're a state you're a state representative in another state or a state senator hearing this right now, go file a bill today to protect your children the same way we did in Tennessee. And with that, we'll take questions. Thank y'all.
So I think the most important thing that came out at the oral argument in this case was when Chase Strangio, the attorney for the ACLU, said in response to questions from Justice Alito that this doesn't affect the suicide rate. I think a lot of parents have been pressured through the idea that you can either have a dead son or a live daughter to go through with these treatments. The research just isn't there. Now, this is a heavy burden for families to carry. Nobody should make light of that. Nobody should make fun of that. It is a hard thing. The evidence is the overwhelming majority of kids that deal with gender confusion in their youth grow out of it, unless they're put on these irreversible courses of treatment. So, I would say to families that are concerned about this, you are right to be concerned about your kid. You are right to care about your kid. Look at the evidence, follow the evidence. One of the most pernicious things about this is the research that has supported increasing irreversible gender transition care is fraudulent. WPATH, the organization that's been pushing it out, was doctoring the research in ways that are explicit in the discovery that Alabama did in its case. They were rewriting the guidelines to make it easier for them to litigate. They were rewriting the guidelines to avoid giving any indication of problems with the evidence. When researchers actually look at the science and do clean science rather than ideologically driven science, the evidence points toward not giving kids these treatments. And I think it's really important for parents to know that there is an ongoing debate about this, and that the people who are telling them that they have to transition their kids for them to be safe aren't in line with the most up-to-date research.
All right, I'll take that one real quick. I want to say this, and I've had these conversations directly with parents, and let me be crystal clear. If you're a parent who's being told by a doctor that you should cut off body parts of your kid who's perfectly healthy, they are lying to you, either for purposes of profit or liberal ideology that has poisoned their mind. They are lying to you as a parent. Love your child through it. Get them every bit of mental health treatment that they need. Exercise every single option before your child becomes an adult. And when they're an adult, if they want to do these surgeries or whatever else they want to, they're an adult. They can do whatever they want to do. But while they're a child and they're still developing and changing and growing, everybody in this room is a recovering teenager. Those are rough years, okay? Love your child through that, and I guarantee you they will turn out better than if you go down this bizarre path, which is no longer allowed in Tennessee and 20-something other states, where you start cutting off body parts or putting chemicals in their body that there's no coming back from. There's no reverse from that. There's no coming back. Just love your kids through it, and don't listen to these crazy liberals that'll say if you cut off body parts, somehow or another it's going to be okay. That's not going to fix anything. Who was next?
We are fierce advocates for parental rights. Leader Lamberth and I led the charge earlier this year to make sure parents have a choice in their children's education. But there are times where the state has a compelling interest to protect children. And sadly, we have laws on the books that have to be exercised sometimes. We have to take children out of abusive homes. We have to protect children in a myriad of different ways. There are other places in our statute where we have prohibited medical practices to protect Tennesseans, and in this particular case, to protect children. We felt like this particular issue rose to that level, where the state has a compelling interest to intervene and to protect the child from a life of irreparable harm to their body.
So what's going to stop parents who want this procedure to be done from simply taking the child out of state? Are you all going to have confusion about hunters or anything like that?
So I know we've already put some laws on the books about another individual, an adult, bringing a child to another state for an illegal abortion, for illegal medical procedures. We have some protections on the books, and definitely we'll look at any statute that's needed down the road. But here in the state of Tennessee, it is absolutely prohibited. That's the win today. This is a win for states' rights, and it's a win to protect children. And so we can look at all those other options down the road, but for today's purposes, within the borders of our state, this simply will not be allowed. So the legislation we introduced today deals with children. It deals with adults making decisions for children before they're even adults to, again, cut off their body parts or shove chemicals in their body that never should have gone into anyone's body. So that's the decision on today. That's all it deals with.
Speaking with some of your colleagues that are against this legislation, they had spoken that you're focusing on attacking the wrong 1%. They said that you should be attacking things like the grocery
Well, I know Jack will have a lot of responses to that, but I mean, I co-sponsored the reduction of the grocery tax. I voted for the last 1.25% cut on grocery tax. We put $3.7 billion into roads this year. Trust me, we can multitask. But defending kids is always going to be at the top of the list, and protecting our children.
Yeah, I certainly take issue with the word attack. I would substitute with protect. That's what this legislation does, is it protects kids. We're not attacking anyone. Leader Lamberth and General Skrmetti did a good job, and I want to echo their sentiments. We love our kids, and kids that are going through a difficult time, they need love, they need compassion, they need access to mental health treatment, and we're working hard to make sure that all those things are available as much as they possibly can be. We're not attacking anyone, we're protecting children.
Just wanted to ask, in the specifics of this ruling, what all does, this block? I mean, if a parent is trying to find some sort of help for their child, are there still avenues minus what has been blocked by this?
All the court decision does is say that Tennessee's law is constitutional. So, I mean, the takeaway from that is that the states which have regulated medical practice for centuries are able to regulate medical practice in this context. I'm sure there will be implications from this in a variety of areas, but it's a very narrowly written case in some respects. It says this is not a case about transgender status. This is not a case about sex discrimination. This is a case about children being prevented from receiving certain drugs for certain purposes. In medicine, if you give someone a drug, you don't just hand them the drug. There's always a medical purpose underlying it, and some drugs are allowed for some purposes and not for others. Matt Rice, the Solicitor General of Tennessee, did a phenomenal job under intense questioning when he was pushed on this by several of the justices of the Supreme Court. And I mean, this is a case about medical treatment. It's driven by a debate about medical evidence, and the law here prohibits medical treatments in certain circumstances where the legislature heard a lot of evidence that the treatments aren't appropriate. So, for parents looking for more guidance beyond that, this is a law regulating the practice of medicine in Tennessee. It is not the one-size-fits-all solution to all questions anybody has about these issues. There's a lot of research to be done. There's a lot of debate to be had. There's a lot of litigation undoubtedly to come. But this provides more clarity than the Supreme Court's given in the past. It affirms the Sixth Circuit's decision in this case, and it lets us know that where there's a debate about medical evidence, the legislature is able to act and is able to take these steps to protect kids.
I spoke with someone who, before this law went into effect, got some of this gender-affirming care when they were 17. They said it was life-saving for them at the time. What would you say?
Well, again, it's pretty clear what the law says. I mean, you can't cut off body parts on a perfectly healthy child. You can't shove experimental drugs into their body that are going to change them forever. You just can't do that to a child in this state. You can make sure that they get mental health treatment, just like the general said, and what Leader Johnson said. You can make sure that they get, get the love and protection that they need and deserve as a child. It's a bizarre argument to me that the left just try to spin here, is that somehow a 2-year-old can decide that they're the wrong sex. Oh yeah, some of them out there love to say, well, at any age, a child can just decide that they are going to be a different sex. These are children, for God's sake. Let them play. Let them learn to read. Let them learn math. Let them go to school, enjoy time with their kids. Leave the social experiments out of it for our kids. Again, for adults, do whatever you want to do. But these horrendous practices that we banned in Tennessee, cutting off body parts of children and shoving drugs into their body that change them forever, it's not gender-affirming care. It destroys their bodies, and the facts show it doesn't save their life. That lie's been told long enough, and it's time for all of us to stop telling it, because it is a lie that cutting off body parts of a child is going to reduce suicidal tendencies, is going to improve their mental health makeup, or anything else. All it does is make them a lifelong patient, and it's wrong. So we're not going to do it here anymore.
Can we peel back the veil a little bit? In the national narrative, this is very bipartisan, warfare. But you guys have dealt with constituents personally, you've talked to people through all the litigation. Is it different when we're talking at personal level compared to more bipartisan people who will work in support? How does this look behind the veil? And can we also talk about the implications on states' rights with this?
probably all going to want to chime in on this one. So in terms of interactions I've had with the community, with constituents, I rarely have I carried something that seemed to be so controversial that was supported by such an overwhelming majority of my constituents and people across the Tennessee, Democrats, Independents, Republicans. I've seen polling, scientific polling, and certainly I've got anecdotal evidence of town hall meetings and talking to constituents about the overwhelming support for this particular legislation. We had lots of conversations. We had testimony from people that were opposed to this legislation, and that's how our process worked. I think we were very thoughtful about it. We took great care and time to make sure we were contemplating every possible aspect of this. We talked to countless medical providers, medical practitioners who had differing opinions on this. So we went through a very thorough and deliberative process. And then you talked about the states' rights implications. That cannot be overstated, the importance of the 10th Amendment state sovereignty aspect of this decision that came down today. Because regardless of how you feel, I hope you would agree that these are decisions that shouldn't be made by unelected, unaccountable judges in the federal court system. These are decisions that should be made by your elected representatives, as we make most of our decisions. That's how the process worked. It was challenged, and I'm so grateful to the Supreme Court and grateful for the General Skrmetti and his team for defending this legislation, because yes, I very passionately believe in the policy that we passed, but equally I'm excited about the impacts and the affirmation of our state's rights as a sovereign state to be able to make these decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I would add, in some ways, this was almost class warfare, right? You have the expert class coming in, you had the ACLU, you had the Biden administration, and the bureaucrats within the Biden administration who have been pushing these ideas for a long time, and are working with or are the people who are doctoring the research here, coming in and trying to impose their policy preferences through the Constitution in a way that the people that ratified the Constitution never would have imagined. If you just look at the asymmetry of resources on this case, when the suit was brought, I think there were about 30 attorneys on the other side. We had the ACLU, we had Lambda Legal, we had the Justice Department. Lambda Legal has apparently raised $285 million off of this case since it went up to the Supreme Court. We had a pretty scrappy team of about 7 attorneys. Some of them are here today. They worked really, really hard here, fighting to allow the people of Tennessee to remain a self-governing people. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to have disagreements. It doesn't mean that we're all going to get on the same page. What it means is we have a mechanism for resolving our disagreements that doesn't involve somebody co-opting a medical association and then inflicting their will on everybody else. It means that we have debates. It means that we have a legislature that hears evidence, that disagrees about it. If evidence keeps coming in and they got it wrong, we can continue to have those disagreements. I mean, I think what we've seen is pretty conclusive to date, but it is not a door that is slammed shut. If there is some radical change in the evidence out there, had this case resulted in constitutionalization, there would be no mechanism for the people of Tennessee to change their mind. There would be no mechanism for them to revisit the decision. But because we live in a representative democracy where the courts have an important but limited role, the Supreme Court said this is a decision for the people of Tennessee through their elected representatives to make. And they gave the same choice to every state out there. Now, obviously, the federal government may have a role to play here as well. And I'm sure if it does, there will be immense litigation resulting from that. But for the time being, each state and the people of each state and their elected representatives are able to grapple with these issues, are able to look at the evidence, are able to decide for themselves through established mechanisms what the law is in their state. And that is a beautiful thing. We don't need a country where people are told what to think. We are a people who decide what we think. We decide collectively, often with spirited disagreement, what the law is going to be. And this decision makes sure that we are able to continue pursuing self-government in the way that we as a nation have for almost 250 years, and that the people of Tennessee will be able to have these debates and reach their own decision.
Last thing I'll say on this is, I mean, look, the crazy liberals in New York and California don't run Tennessee. Okay, we've got a lot of really common sense Democrats and Republicans that voted for and supported this bill. And there's a number of Democrats that I serve with that would come to you and say, well, man, I really wish I could vote in favor of this, but my party will eat me alive if I did. So it's time for this to stop being a partisan thing and it start being just about kids and families and Tennesseans. And so we're going to fight at the ballot box to make sure that we elect folks that are going to protect our kids and protect common sense, and are going to fight for that. And we're going to fight in the court system too, because we've got General Jonathan Skrmetti and Matt Rice and their whole team. And I'll tell you what, I'll put them up against any team out there on their worst day against the other team's best day. Today was a huge win. I appreciate y'all being here. But to be clear, it's a win for Tennessee, it's a win for Tennesseans, and it's a win for the children in this state, because they'll be protected from this liberal crazy crap. So I appreciate y'all coming. Is that it for today? All right, thank you.
Thank you all.